You are listening to the Global CTE Podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisom.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Global CTE Podcast, where it is our desire to wrap a blanket of goodwill around the career tech education community, and we highlight only the best, the brightest, the movers and the shakers, the people who are really doing the work to make a difference and help prepare our students for success in the global marketplace. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very special guest, my good friend, Corey Mohn. Let me tell you about Corey, okay? Corey's an entrepreneur in the public sector, driven by the mission of helping people make connections that enable them to live their dreams. As president and executive director of CAPS Network, he directs a 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on paving the education to employment path through profession-based learning. Programs that affiliate with CAPS Network share best practices and connections with professional partners, post-secondary institutions, teachers, and students. The CAPS model is an example of how business, community, and public education can partner to produce personalized learning experiences that educate the workforce of tomorrow, especially in high-skill, high-demand jobs. The CAPS Network now includes 93 unique programs encompassing over 160 school districts in 23 states and 4 countries. And most recently, Corey's organization was inducted into the 2023 HundrEDorg Global Collection as one of the top 100 innovative education solutions in the world. Corey, welcome to the show.
And thank you so much for having me. And that was a mouthful. I feel like I need to talk and let you get a drink of water. I appreciate it. I mean, I always love it when people are lifting up the great work of the people out in the field, doing the important work. I'm really the chief cheerleader for the exercises and the experiences. I don't pretend to be the reason any of this is happening, but my job is just to lift up the good work, try to remove barriers where they arise, maybe empower some people to do awesome things and then get out of their way, right? That's my biggest job, is to get out of the way.
Absolutely. And that is honestly what I hope to do today, is to get out of the way and just throw you a few alley-oops. Just to share, to pick that brain of yours. You've seen so much, you've participated in so much. I'll tell you briefly before we jump into the first question. I came across CAPS. I'm based in St. Louis, from the Parkway School District, and I was doing some work with Jennifer Stanfield.
Yeah.
Some years ago, and she's like, we scheduled this meeting, and she's like, Sylvester, I have to talk to you. I just saw this program, and we have to do something like it. And these were the early days of the Spark program that's going on in the Parkway School District, that was totally modeled after some of the work that you've done at Blue Valley. Jennifer was so inspired by meeting you and the team at Blue Valley that she's like, we have to do something like this for our students. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, Jennifer is wonderful. She's been a great partner, and it's a great example of she had an idea. She found a little bit of inspiration through some things that were happening at our original CAPS program here in the Blue Valley School District, which is actually where I'm standing now in this original facility. And but then feeling the empowerment to create a model that made sense for her local area, her school district, and effectively branding it locally as Spark. And then when we developed this broader network of schools, she had great energy around this idea of connecting and becoming an affiliate, and then partnering to learn, share, and grow. And it's been fun to watch the Parkway program grow, because it started as that entrepreneurial incubator, the Spark Incubator, and has now grown to include bioscience, technology, teacher education, a number of different professional strands, as we call them. So that's been a lot of fun. She's a great person.
Yeah, 100%. And I was there in those early meetings of trying to develop that entrepreneurial program into what would it look like? Where should it be? And we continue to reflect back on what the work you were doing in the Blue Valley CAPS program. So let's start there. Let's go back to 2009. What's the origin story? What's happening? Set the scene. Like, how do we get to where we're at today? What's the origin story?
Yeah, well, so I find it super fascinating how this all came to be, and it was prior to me being involved. So it's almost like a legend, right? Kind of the legendary story, or the I don't know, maybe just a very interesting fable of sorts that this program lifted up in the environment that it did, because the Blue Valley School District, which is part of the greater Kansas City area, but is a corporate suburb and on the Kansas side of the state line, had at that point for years been regarded as one of the top school districts in the country as it related to standard measurements of success. And for those that are in the education industry, if you're in that role or a role that relates to that, you're very familiar with No Child Left Behind and this era of, let's measure, assess, let's drive towards, driving up test scores, and, let's make sure, with good intention, helping every student to achieve. But there were a lot of side effects to that as well, in terms of our orientation, where we were putting our time and energy. But Blue Valley School District, one of our former superintendents said, after kind of No Child Left Behind had run its course in terms of being kind of the prevailing, driver for education in K-12, he had said, I think that Blue Valley won No Child Left Behind, and I'm not sure that was a good thing because it was so hyper-focused. It was kind of a pressure cooker of sorts. But when you're in an environment where, as a school district, you are on top, it's really hard to find motivation to change. I mean, if you're winning the game, why insist on changing the rules? And that's exactly what happened. So in 2000, just prior to 2009, which is when the CAPS model launched, there was a couple of years of conversation and this exploration of, are we missing something? Is there something out there that we're not providing to our students? What's the next thing? If we were to evolve and make some change and disrupt ourselves, what would that be? And it just turned out that all of the various elements or ingredients were kind of in place. There was a relatively new superintendent who was looking to do something interesting and different, as most of us do when we enter into a new role or organization, make a little bit of a mark, do something that's different than has been happening. There was a school board that was made up primarily of business and industry leaders in the community. And their view was they were not getting people to come into their workforce or their industry out of the university, college, even straight from high school, that had the skill sets that they were looking for. And oh, by the way, it wasn't the technical skills they were seeking. It was what we would call durable skills. Right. And I know you've had some episodes this year related to the topics of, kind of like with Courtney Riley and Skills Line, talking with her about the work that she does around kind of building these modules of support. We have a great partner in America Succeeds that's lifted up this website, durableskills.org. But it's all these things that everyone knows you need to be successful as a human, but schools typically don't teach. Communication skills, project management skills, teamwork. What happens when you're working with someone else and they do something illogical in your mind, or they're becoming difficult to work with? How do you intervene skillfully to make progress? How do you manage yourself when someone pulls one of your triggers, right? All those things we know are important, but we don't teach them. And so anyway, we had the kind of those elements in place. The business partners were saying, if we really wanted to do something, we would create an opportunity for high school students to get an experience that would give them those skills. And then when it came to the how question, so how do we do that? As the legend goes, one of our board members said, well, have we ever thought about just fast forwarding the students past high school and college and dropping them right in to the environment by which we're trying to, what we're trying to solve here? instead of simulating something or giving them a little bit of exposure, what if we just shot them right into that situation and let them learn from the reality of the situation? And that was really fascinating. And so then it was, once that was kind of dropped and there was some energy from those board members to support it from their industries, to say, we will be the guinea pigs, we will allow this to kind of start up. Then it got really interesting, because then it's a risk proposition. Now is the school district truly ready?
That's what I wanted. I wanted to hit you right there, because I know both of us are very entrepreneurial thinkers. Like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. But for maybe the more traditional educators who were there during that meeting, how did that go over when someone's like, oh, just bring those 11th graders, just bring them to the office. We'll put them on the floor, and we'll put them in the lab. Like, how did that go? How'd that go?
Yeah. So let me tell another piece of the story here, which I think highlights how interesting this got in terms of the dynamics. So when it got to the point where, okay, we think we figured out what is a possibility for us to get better, and we think we know, or at least have a suggestion of how to do it. Now it becomes a question of kind of the logistics and right? How do we actually set the program up? And as that conversation was unfolding, the district administration, working through this process, said, okay, we're going to build this up like we would any other new program or initiative. We're going to give ourselves some runway and time. We're going to hire in an executive director. We're going to figure out how to build a facility, all those things. And so they planned for a good solid year of runway. The Board of Education got so excited about this concept that they essentially told the superintendent, no, we want this now. You have enough time to pilot something in a first year in 2009, not wait till 2010 when the building's ready, or you've had time to fully plan everything. This needs to be iterative. It needs to start now and figure it out. And so now you can imagine the superintendent, the deputy, all the people behind the scenes are scurrying. It's kind of like the metaphor of the chickens with their heads cut off, like trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? How do we do this? But what it did, which is super fascinating as a case study, is it forced the program to start fully embedded in industry locations, because there was no building. There was nowhere to put the students or the teachers. And it was one of the greatest happy accidents of all time, because what it did was it created the culture, the professional culture of CAPS organically. When teachers and students are showing up every day to have their class at Black and Beach Engineering or DLR Group or Freedom Bank, you have really no choice but to understand what's going on in that profession. You're having water cooler conversations with professionals every single day. Guess what? You notice how they dress at their workplace. You start dressing that way because you want to fit in. Like, all those things just happen. And it allowed a whole year of that, so that when the building opened in the second year, those elements of culture were embedded and they came into the building with the program, with the teachers. And we've been able to, and I say this as a local program here in Blue Valley, it's maintained itself over the years. It's also created a model that we see in some of our affiliate programs where they have just said, that's the way we're going to run it. We don't need a building. We can't afford a building. We're going to fully embed ourselves out in the industry. And that is our flavor of the model. And it's worked really well. So that's been,
I love that. That's a perfect example of the power of place-based learning,
Yes.
We think about that so much in foreign language, like if you want to learn French, you're probably better off just going to France, right? And
you're right.
And you're gonna figure out how to say, how do I get to the restaurant, or all the different things that you need conversationally. But I love how that really, you called it a happy mistake,
happy
right?
accident. Yeah.
A happy accident. Excuse me, a happy accident. I love that. So let me ask you this: what are some of the best practices that you've learned in connecting students to those real world professionals?
That's a really great question. And I love your metaphor of the cultural, where you go to another country to learn the language, where you're forced to learn it. I have never actually, in all the years of being connected to this, I have never heard anybody make that comparison, but it's a really good one. It's a really good one because I know as someone who doesn't naturally, I've tried learning foreign language without being embedded somewhere, and it's hard.
Right.
And I think some people are more natural to it. It doesn't stick real well. And I think there really is something to that, getting just fully immersed. And that's what you always hear is immersion, right? Cultural immersion. So that's really good. Best practices, what we're seeing is a shift in terms of how people are identifying what we would call profession-based learning opportunities, or another way that you hear it mentioned out in the ecosystem is career connected. The traditional viewpoint on that has always seemed to be limited and a bit rigid. And what I mean by that, and still great experiences, don't get me wrong, but the traditional model is when people think of, we want to give kids a real world experience, or we want to get them career connected, the minds used to anyway, always seem to move to, well, that means internships. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with internships. They can be fantastic if they're teed up the right way and you get the right match and all those things. And we have a number of opportunities for internships for students inside of the CAPS network and our various affiliates. But I think one of the best practices that we've seen is districts and school programs that open up a wider menu of options for business and industry partners to find ways to lean in and support students, and the ability to flex those options as the program evolves, as students have availability or restrictions on what they can do, and to then meet the students and the industry partners where they are. And I would give the perspective as someone who, my background is in entrepreneurship and business more than it is in education. That's kind of how I grew up in the career world, was starting a company which was out in St. Louis. And that was a great experience for me on many levels. But, when you're in an industry or you're part of running an organization or you manage an organization, one of the biggest challenges to the idea of taking on an intern, even if they are fantastic, is it's one more thing that is occupying your mind space, is how do I make sure I'm supporting this young person? It's almost like you've just taken on a new employee and you've got to go through the whole process of, am I supporting them? Do they have enough work to do? Heaven forbid something doesn't go well and you've got to intervene in that. It's a big ask. It's a huge ask. And the idea, I'll give one example of creating another menu option of a client-connected project, is that it takes the pressure of saying yes off of that industry partner. If the students are serving as consultants to the business, to you as the employee or the employer, then they aren't necessarily on site with you every day. They probably aren't. There isn't an expectation that you're checking in on them every single day. That's what the teachers there to support them in that. You may come in and do a little coaching or mentoring once every couple of weeks, but otherwise you've handed the project off and you're waiting to get the deliverables back. And we've learned it's so much easier to get a yes, and you can get more students connected that way. So I think a best practice is being open to the possibilities around how to connect students.
I like how you just layered that in, where maybe an internship is a much heavier lift, but are you suggesting that the framework is more, here's a project that we're working on in our business, let me give it to you all to work on. These are the parameters, work on this project, I'll coach you through it here, and then you all deliver us a presentation on maybe making a strategic decision. Am I hearing it correct?
That is exactly right. And one way to think about it, to simplify it a little bit, and
Okay.
that it helps people kind of flip the switch in their mind, is this key question that one of our industry partners coined many years ago related to CAPS projects. And he said, when you go and when you look at your work and you're trying to figure out how to support CAPS or to get high school students involved, ask yourself the question, what is the 10th thing on my to-do list? Everyone has a 10th thing. You never get to it. It's not mission critical. Why not hand it off to some eager, innovative young people? Let them take a hack at it. Worst case scenario, they come back and there's nothing that really amounts to, work that you can actually lift up, but you haven't invested a lot. You haven't invested usually any money. You maybe have invested a few hours. And oftentimes what we find is there is value. Like they bring something back that actually does move the needle. And now you're at a next stage of that project where you can actually put a team on it. You can now drive it as the professional. Or you bring in another set of students to go to phase 2 with you in the next semester. So that 10th thing on the to-do list question, I think, is one that unlocks potential.
Okay, so I love it. The 10th thing on the to-do list. Give me an example, preferably from one of your affiliate network school districts, where they took a 10th thing and they just blew it up and went through the roof with it.
Well, there are lots of great examples. So one that's coming to mind, which is a story I haven't told in a while, one of our affiliate programs, engineering class, there was a connection made with a local hotel, and it was a hotel that's part of a chain that most people would know. And this local location, they had developed the hotel. They had, the outdoor area. I think there was an outdoor pool, but there was also a work area that they had set up outside for nice days in the spring and the summer when their guests wanted to go outside and get on Wi-Fi and, do their work. And I've got this is my notorious, my iced tea. I'm an iced tea drinker. So for me, it's like, nice day, go outside, put the shades on, drink my iced tea, get on the laptop, do my thing. Well, this was kind of a blip of sorts, but the way they designed the hotel and the way it was positioned on the property, the way the land and the other buildings around it set it up, there was like a wind tunnel that had formed naturally, that anybody that went and sat outside in that area, you couldn't keep any paper on the table. Things were blowing everywhere. No one wanted to sit out there because you were always under natural duress, right? And it was causing problems for the hotel because it was like unusable space. And so they actually came in and said, look, this isn't like a super high priority, but it's a nuisance. We're trying to figure out how to add value back to our guests. As engineering students, can you come up with some solutions to how we could create a situation where this isn't an issue? And so the students who were a part of a civil engineering course through CAPS actually went through a process of designing different options of how they could, and with reasonable expense, actually correct for this issue. And they came up with a couple of different solutions, but the one that actually got selected by the hotel, and this was pitched back to the management of the hotel, not just the management locally, but it was like corporate management and got involved in this, which is super cool. And they ended up selecting an idea which included these very non-intrusive, clear, almost like walls, but barriers that helped redirect the wind and protected the area where people that were guests there could work. And so it actually became a thing. They got the design, they figured it out, what they wanted to do. The students even gave them the pricing of how much it would cost. So they used professional software architectural software to design it, and then we're able to spit out a spreadsheet and hand it to the folks at the hotel to say, this is how much it will cost if you go with this option. Huge value add for the hotel, great project for the students, resume worthy work.
Yes.
So that's one example. That was a 10th thing for them.
Man, that's incredible. That that story, hats off to that school district and the company, the hotel chain, for allowing them access to work on that 10th thing.
Yeah.
And the students, this is something I find, like when you give students that opportunity to work on real world projects and they see the value in the solution they provided, it just really increases their personal belief that my ideas are valuable, I am valuable, I have something that I can add, to the world and to the community. So that's powerful, man.
You're right. And that's something we lean into. And oftentimes it's taken us a while to really put our thumb on how to talk about what we see. Like, and you've been around it, Sylvester, like there's a certain magic to what happens when students get aligned to what they care about, what they're good at, and a problem in the world they want to solve. And we see it in our CAPS affiliates all the time. And trying to pin down what it is, like how to talk about what that is tough, because anything that's magical, that means it's hard to explain. But recently we've really, I think, figured out that what it is, it's the magic of self-discovery. It's when a student is they are feeling empowered to be on a self-discovery journey. They're exploring what that looks like for them. And they have an authentic project that is something that they are bought into, in many cases that they chose themselves or they sourced themselves. And then when they go to share what they're working on, it's in their eyes, it's in the spirit of them. There's a vibe to it. Like you can feel it in the air, and it's addictive. Like I'll tell you, like I'm not leaving anytime soon, because it's like super fun to work in this environment and to be around these young people who are doing these amazing things and feeling this way, right? Now put, a few hundred of them together in a building or on site somewhere, and now that energy is just through the roof. And we just know that this is what's good, right? This is what's good for people, whether they're young people in high school or they're in college or they're in the workforce. Like there's something to be said for aligning people to the work that makes them happy and that they're meant to do to make a positive impact on the world.
I love that. And I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse, and that, like, well, here are the jobs that make X amount of dollars a year. Like that's important. But I think I like how you just said, when the students go through that process of self-discovery, we can start with your interest, your passions, and then a program like the CAPS model exposes them to the different career options within that are in alignment with their interests, and ultimately that we hope that leads them to happiness and success first. And I think that's important.
Yes, absolutely. Well, very well said.
Yeah, I saw that you do such a great job of posting those student examples. I saw recently you posted, is it from Provo CAPS? Did I say that right? Provo CAPS in Utah. I saw one of your students, one of their students working in the lab with some chemicals, learning how to make personal care products.
Yeah.
I'm when you see that, like, tell me your feeling. Like, how do you feel when you see these students exploring and and capturing that light and their interest in the career field?
I mean, it's powerful. It is powerful. And especially I know it's extremely powerful for educators, career educators who've been in more traditional classrooms, to have the opportunity to see students kind of at their peak level of interest and engagement. Engagement is, if you talk to any educator, engagement is the key to everything, right? It's the key that unlocks all of the potential learning, behavior. You don't have behavior issues if a student's engaged. I mean, it just goes away, right? And so, but as someone who came more from an industry entrepreneurial background, it's intriguing, it's fascinating, it drives the curiosity. Like when I see a student like that, and I wasn't in person to see this young lady and the work that she's doing. Elisa Morris on our team, who's our CAPS network coordinator, actually got a chance to meet her. And, she came back just inspired by what she saw. And that's an example of a student who they're embedded with this company called New Skin. So it was a client connected project from a company that was providing space for students, like they report there for their class. So it was kind of a double whammy where she not only is working an authentic project, but she's doing it like from the headquarters. So you can imagine a scenario where she's really excited about this. She's curious about, chemistry. She's now got an application that's real, that could make an impact, that's related to chemistry. She has a question about something she's working on, or she thinks she's made a breakthrough. She can go somewhere else in that building and tell people about it. She can go ask questions on site. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. It's almost like if you could bring in, you're engaging with content remotely, or maybe you've watched a TED Talk. Suddenly you walk down the hall and you're engaging with that person, right? About something that you care about, that you've been working on. And it's a situation that's set up itself there in Provo. And what a powerful and exciting opportunity for not just that young professional, but for all the others that are there in that program.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, 100%, man. Now I do want to go here. I want to ask you something. Let's zoom out a little bit. So your CAPS network was recently recognized by HundrEDorg for their global collection as one of the top 100 innovative education solutions in the world. Congrats to you, the team, everyone who's worked on it, all the alumni, everything. But I saw that you were at the 100 Global Summit. Tell me, I'm curious, what did you learn, or what did you take away from being there?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. It means a lot to get congratulations from you. You've seen a lot in your career, and you continue to move around. And I similarly follow you on social media, LinkedIn, and always enjoy seeing the things that you're up to. The global convening was really fascinating. So we ended up going to Helsinki, Finland, where this event occurred. HundrEDorg was founded by two Finnish entrepreneurs. And it originally started as an innovation recognition and kind of an accelerator for educational innovations only in Finland. That's kind of the origin story for 100. But then it caught on because there were a lot of really interesting things happening in other parts of the world. And people were saying, hey, what would it look like for all of us in Finland to be connecting to others? And then what if we were a hub for the entire globe around these things? And so anyway, we went to Helsinki. There was a conference and a convening of the 100 selected innovations, plus the team there at 100 and a few other foundations that have funded and supported the 100 organization. And I would say, I had no way to lay a bar of expectation around this event. It was so kind of out of the box of what we were used to, that going into it, there was a lot of question marks. I mean, we were excited to be recognized, but as far as like, what would we get out of it? That was an open question, but I will tell you, it was absolutely fantastic. Part of it was just the diversity of people that were involved. I mean, of the 100 selected innovations, they came from 54 different countries. And the event itself, not every of the 100 made it there, but quite a few did. And just to give one example, at one point, we were there kind of officially engaging for 3 days. The second day of the engagement, we had almost like a design sprint conversation around big themes in education. And, what do we think, where are we now and where do we think we should go? And what's the gap? And then how do we get there? And around my table of, I think it was about 12 people, there were representatives from Finland, Canada, China, India, Nigeria, obviously the United States, Kazakhstan. I mean, it was like a little mini UN, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And what I learned, to get to your question, we learned a lot about what is similar in terms of vision and where people want to go. And it's very much connected to this idea of student self-discovery and unlocking that. it doesn't matter if you're in China or India, which are much more rigid in terms of their approach, or if you're in Finland or Canada or the US, where there may be a little more flexibility in terms of how the system deploys itself. That was a common theme. And there were, I don't know, I would say there were 3 or 4 common themes. Social emotional support for kids was part of it, right? But there were also very interesting differences. And it really came down to how those countries, how they structure educational opportunities, in particular public education, and what it looks like. And so we learned a ton about the different ways that the cultures are kind of impact education, how they structure themselves, and how that could lead to some barriers related to implementation of things like CAPS or other like student learner driven models. But I came away more than anything hopeful because of how much similarity there is in terms of a vision. And we made a ton of connections. We're following up with just handfuls of people, quite a few, to talk about possibilities. And so it's really exciting.
That's awesome, man. Now, this is the second or third time that student self-discovery has come up in our conversation. So from a global perspective, what are you seeing around some best practices in implementing student self-discovery in the classroom, in the district? Or
Yeah, well, I think the first one is, and if you're watching this on a video, I'm going to make sure my computer isn't going to die on me here. I'm going to be plugging this in.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. But, it's the little things, right? I get so wound up in these conversations that I forget that you actually need power to your computer. But I think the biggest one is just an awareness, right? Okay. It's an awareness that this is important enough to have it as part of your curriculum design. So you have to keep it front and center, and you have to be intentional about self-discovery, which means we can't just create units of learning, do quizzes, and then have an exam or a final at the end, and then forget that, we never asked the students to learn more about themselves, to get exposed to other things, to actually be curious about who they are. Because we know that the context around learning is incredibly important. It's at least as important as the content. But it's really easy to get in this technical mode as an educator to say, I need to hit all these units, I need to hit all these standards. And then we forget the whole reason we're in education, right? I mean, the whole point is let's get everyone to a place where they can have a successful, meaningful, and happy life. And the self-discovery piece is much more, I think, important to that than whether or not you can operate a formula. Because we know the technical pieces you can even learn on your own if you have the motivation. So I think the best practice is create time, carve time, make sure it's a priority. And then there are tools out there that can help, right? We work with a group called Indigo Education Company. They have a DISC profile that's based on Target Trading International corporate kind of assessment. They're fantastic. Skills Line we talked about. You've got groups like America Succeeds that have the durable skills wheel and all this other data that you can use. All those things can help a student kind of process, where are they, who are they, how do they want to deploy themselves? And I think that's really, really a key as far as the best practice. You just got to make the time and make it a priority.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I'm curious what you think about this, Corey. I've had a few guests on the podcast from other countries, from Kenya, from just had my guy Petri on, from Finland. And a really interesting conversation I just had. It hasn't released yet with my friend Atul Terminakar, he's the chairman of the Global Schools Foundation out of Singapore. And they run international schools in like 9 different countries. And the focus was a lot of conversation around self-discovery, like helping the students uncover who they are, but then also around global citizenship, like producing people who figure out what their gifts are and how they can contribute those gifts to the world. And I find that sometimes is more prominent in conversations with people in other countries versus when we're having conversations in America. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think there's truth to that. And this was an interesting subset going to this 100 event, in that the people who are recognized, most of them are already scaling internationally from where they are located. Some have not yet, but they were in the process of being selected, subjected to a lot of evaluation and judging that goes into this process. And the results of that were, well, they're only in their own country now, but they have this vast potential to scale. And so they were included. But because this subset was already kind of moving that direction, I think it could have skewed a little bit because there was a lot of discussion of how this works. But I would agree with you. The majority of the conversations and my kind of exposure to what's happening in other parts of the world has led me to believe that may be more top of mind for other countries. I wonder, I don't know what the answer is to this, but I wonder how much of that is impacted by our own domestic politics, the areas of focus that we have had, and what is the undercurrent around schools now in this country, public education, and a lot of debate about what the purpose and functions of schools are. And there tends to be, or at least there's been more of a debate about, focusing locally versus reaching out. And so I think there are various variables to it. I also know that geographically speaking, I'll just use Europe as an example. When you're in Europe or you are connecting with people in Europe, it's very common for them. They move about, the countries of Europe quite often. Like the barrier to moving and like traveling internationally is much lower. And so I think they have a greater awareness of what's happening around them. They have been around and traveled outside of their country more. The countries are smaller. They have an infrastructure that allows for transport much easier. And so I think that's a function of it too. But I agree with you. Global citizenship is an important thing to think about, because if you are purpose driven and you have figured out something that you care about, a problem that you want to solve or an opportunity that you want to tackle, the world is highly connected now due to the internet revolution, and travel is, as much as it's can be more of a barrier for folks in the US. It's not the barrier it used to be, right? It's pretty easy to move around anymore. So if you care enough about something, you're going to need to be able to engage globally, more than likely, to make the impact you want to make. So understanding, having a cultural EQ or a cultural quotient, a CQ as opposed to an EQ, I think is an important thing to consider.
It's so funny. You just made me think about this. As you said, the world is we're so connected now. You just made me think of the Kansas connection and CAPS. I did a keynote for the Topeka.
Our CAPS affiliate there.
Yeah, your CAPS affiliate there.
TCAP.
Yeah, TCAP. Yeah, TCAP.
Oh, yeah.
And a lady that's an educator there is from Kenya, and her friend so happens to be like one of the founding board members of Kenya's version of ACTE.
Okay.
Made an introduction from a keynote in Kansas. It went from Kansas to Kenya, which led to me working with their organization in Kenya. But you're so right. And I think our students, they're so aware of the young people. Like when I watch what my son is looking at on YouTube, they're all thinking about issues and ways that they interact with the world. It's so true. But I want to touch on something, because you and I have a unique perspective of entrepreneurship and education, right? Coming from the outside, coming from industry. Now, for the ed tech people that are listening, like talk about finding the importance of finding product market fit as with an educational venture, an education program before you try to scale that thing. I'm just curious because I see so many people get it wrong, or they don't understand it. But you're doing it right. You're crushing it. 12,000 students, 20,000 alumni. So, like, talk about product market fit for educational venture.
I love it. I love that you're using that terminology because it's a bit of a bugaboo for folks that are kind of floating around the education industry as businesses, tech startups, programs, networks. I think part of the challenge of it all is just how decentralized the system is. Another word for it, which our common friend Greg Brown likes to say, is fragmented. Right, the market is fragmented, and it's absolutely true. I mean, you look at just public education in the U.S. We have over 13,000 public school districts. I mean, think about that for a minute. That's 13,000 superintendents. That's, on average, probably 5 or 6 board members that have votes that control decision making. I mean, you're getting into close to 100,000 decision makers. And so when that happens, there's opportunity for many players in the market. And that's not a bad thing. But what it creates is potential for a lot of solutions that have not fully cooked and not developed product market fit. And one of the things that we've kind of leaned into as the CAPS network, which, is a nonprofit, it's purpose driven. We're not a for-profit. I do see ourselves in kind of that startup mentality because we keep ourselves lean intentionally. And I think that's been a benefit to us. But one of the things that we lean into that I think helps ensure for us product market fit is that we run our model. We're a model and a framework. We incorporate through affiliation school districts or programs that meet our 5 core values, at least in their vision, if they haven't launched yet, their vision or what they're already kind of starting to implement. We provide access to resources. We provide connections to others who are doing the work. But beyond that, this is very much a do-it-yourself model in the sense that you get to co-own this is a network. You get to own your own local program. And when that's the case, you're meeting the market where it is in those local areas. The thing that we've seen that's created a challenge, if we put our entrepreneurial hats on here, is we see a lot of folks out in the marketplace who are leaning into this feeling that they are sensing from educators, which is absolutely true, that, hey, I just need the solution I can plug in and go, right? I just need you to come in, give me the technical solution, and then we'll turnkey it and off we go. And I get that. But from the standpoint of market value and the connection between your product and the market and sustainability, it's not the optimal solution, because if you create what I would call a cookie cutter solution, even if it's powered by great technology, as soon as your local program and what you want to do as a local program does not feel like it fits the tech or fits the product, you now have an issue, right? You have a tension. And so what I've been really proud of with the CAPS network is our ability to be okay with variation as it relates to our local affiliates, so long as the core values are adhered to, and that we've figured out how to make that a positive, which is we see our network affiliates as almost like experimenters, labs, right? They're entrepreneurial labs where they're trying things in a different way that we have come up with, and we get to learn from them. And then we can deploy the learning. If something is successful, we can push it out to the other nodes in the network and say, we're not telling you have to do this, but look what just happened over here in Tennessee. Hey, everybody in Utah, maybe this is something that makes sense for you too. And so that's been really fun to watch it develop, but it's messy, right? And not every business owner or network director wants messy. So that's the tension, but I think that's what ensures market fit.
100%. But that is what is so powerful. That community that you have built. Just from a business perspective, if you can help someone get there faster, that's a win. If I can help you get to that solution faster, remove time, remove effort. And so, like you said, that community that you've built, I think is powerful to help personalize it locally, but then what's working, now we can share that best practice. I love that.
Absolutely right.
In that way. So I hope any edtech people who are listening just heard what Corey just said. It's like, it's not so much cookie cutter, even though sometimes education, people do come to you and they're just like, we just want, like, just make it easy. They just want to press play on something, but you really do have to personalize it to help make it great for whatever local district or community. So I'm curious. Let me ask you this: what's next? What's next, man? Like you're doing so many amazing things. The HundrEDorg, like new programs coming on. So what's the next level CTE, next level CAPS? Talk to me.
Yeah, well, I love that question. And before I jump into that answer, something you just said, Sylvester, that I think is worth leaning into a bit here is, I think it's important if whether you're an ed tech or you've got a nonprofit that's focused on education, or you have some other kind of for-profit business that services schools, and not everybody's going to jump up and applaud on this one. but I think it's important. I think it's important to say, which is, I think if you're being true to a purpose of supporting schools and doing what's right by kids, students, young professionals, you need to find yourself in a place where sometimes you're going to tell the potential customer it's not a good fit. Like, don't just take them because they're going to cut you a check. And we've had that come up where we've had partners of ours who've said, just like you said, hey, I just want to plug this thing in. I'm ready. Hey, we want to be in the network. Where do I send the check? And I've had to say, well, that's not how it works. It's like, I don't want to be someone who, I'm not an idiot. I don't want to turn away money. But at the same time, there's something more important to this. If it's going to work, like, it has to be the right fit for you. It has to meet your vision. It has to be, you have to help drive this. It's not, you just plug this flash drive in and all of a sudden everything goes, right? So I think that's important. And sometimes if you're feeling pressure to drive revenue, that's not what you want to hear. But I think long-term, it's the right answer to be sustainable. And that's
the goal. Well, like you said, if you're truly committed to your org, to your nonprofit, to your education business, your ed tech, it's about building that long-term value, making the long-term impact with keeping students at the front of it. Now you brought it up, so I'm going to shift. We're going to come back to the next level CTE and CAPS, but I read a great article from Kelly Young, founder of president of Education Reimagined, and she was talking about building learner-centered ecosystems. And I think part of what you just said is those that you do have to reject is because maybe you're not thinking about this the same way and trying to build that learner-centered ecosystem. What are actually, I'm curious your thoughts on, like, what's required to do that, to build those learner-centered ecosystems.
Absolutely. No, I read the same article and ended up sharing it out because I really believed in it. And Kelly and her team are doing great work raising awareness around this idea of ecosystem building and finding ways to not be afraid to try some different ways to get this kind of learning out to students. I don't want to say they're giving up on reforming the traditional system, but they're finding kind of the bypasses to get things started, micro schools and other formats for school, and what's happening in the community, and so forth. So if you're interested, Education Reimagined, definitely a group to look up. I completely agree with kind of the vision there, which is if we have an ecosystem mindset, a lot of this stuff takes care of itself. And I would give this example, and it's not a specific example, I'll protect the guilty, I guess. But we've had districts come to us and say, I'm thinking of one in particular that has kind of come and said, hey, we hear all this buzz about CAPS, and we've got this thing, and we think it's worthy of being designated with CAPS, and so we want to be in, and here's how much do we owe you, and let's get in there. And of course, then my response is we need to get on a phone call, we need to meet, we need to get you out to see the action in person. Like, it needs to be a good fit. We need to get to know each other and build trust and all those things. And what typically is the case when we have those kinds of conversations is you start to notice that their desire has less to do with connecting to the others in the network and more about some kind of a designation or a way to lift up their own program. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being a little bit selfish. There's nothing wrong with like trying to elevate what you're doing. But if you are not thinking about things in terms of the ecosystem, you are completely missing the boat. Completely missing it. And the ironic thing is, the more you lean into something like a network, the more you help others, the more you're willing to be a giver and not a taker or a matcher, as Adam Grant would say. The more you are a giver, the more you actually get in return. So, I mean, anyway, so yes, I'm all in on Kelly Young's vision. I'm all in on Education Reimagined. They're great friends of CAPS Network, and big shout out to them.
Yeah, Corey, that was so well said. And as you were talking, you made me reflect on, like, that is the reason why I created this podcast, because I move around so much, and it was something that was like on my heart for years, because I'm moving around so much, and I'm at a conference or speaking somewhere or working with a school, and you see, as Greg said, it's so fragmented, and I'm in this part of the country and they're doing this amazing thing, but no one knows, like, it's only impacting 42 kids, or this school district or this superintendent. So I think sharing the light, it's one of my favorite books, The Go-Giver. And I truly believe that, like, you can give your way to everything that you want comes from operating in gratitude, sharing, lifting up others. How can you add more value to other people? So with that said, let's jump into my last question. It's kind of a combo here. What is your vision for the future of CTE? But I want to personalize it to you. What's the next level CTE? What's the next level for CAPS as well?
Absolutely. So next level CTE for me, or career and tech ed for me, is I want every student to at least have the option or opportunity to be engaged in next generation career connected learning, or what we would call profession based learning. And what you see when you move around, I can almost guarantee you've seen this, Sylvester, is there are still places, many places in this country where if you get involved in something that's connected to CTE, there's a stigma attached to it. Like, you couldn't cut it in a traditional classroom. You're not smart enough to go to college. And we all know that's absolute baloney. But there's still a little bit of that vibe out there. And so my vision for next gen CTE is that stigma is wiped out. Every student sees the opportunities. They get to make a true choice about whether or not they want to engage in those opportunities. If the answer is no, I learn more, I learn best traditionally, and I'm driving to, go for the specific thing, and this is the path I need, and it doesn't involve this, that's great, right? It's an informed decision. But it should be an informed decision, not with a bias because of what people have either told me, or this, kind of the feeling I get when I am placed in a program or class. So that's my kind of hope and vision for next gen CTE. For CAPS, we have some really interesting strategic opportunities coming up. as a network. You mentioned, we've got these 93 affiliates now, and it's pretty well nationwide, and we've got a few international affiliates, and we just got this recognition. So what does that mean? Well, as someone who has an entrepreneurial mind and isn't afraid of a little bit of risk, I see that as a huge window of opportunity for us to expand our connectivity, to get more students connected to other cultures, to pull in some resources that we didn't even know existed before. And there are a couple of areas where I think we're going to lean in over the next year to 2 years. One of those is on the industry front, building a council of champions from the industry sector. And we've already got a few of those in place. The first big domino to fall was on the engineering side, and Black and Beach Engineering has become a corporate champion of CAPS network, and we're super excited about that. But we're going to build a council that involves all these various industries, right? Medicine, engineering, education, technology, innovation. So I'm extremely excited about what that's going to mean. And then the other one, which I continue to be bullish on this, but also just hyper curious of how it'll actually play out, is the idea of building a very different kind of partnership with post-secondary institutions that's not specific to the technical aspects, right? Those are important. Can students get dual credit? That's important. Can students get access to scholarships? That's important. But what would it look like to create a coalition of higher ed institutions that are willing to lock arms and say, we truly want students that have had an experience like CAPS on our campuses, and we want to empower them the second they step on these campuses to be in charge of their learning, and to get enough of this kind of initial inaugural support to be able to cross-brand with these higher eds to go out and say, we're planting a flag. This is the future of higher education. Who's with us? And then for us to be able to market that to students in the CAPS network to say, you want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like you aren't getting whiplash when you show up at freshman year and end up in a lecture hall of 300 people and you can't talk to the instructor because you got to go through 6 TAs before you can. Like these are the places you might want to go explore. So I don't know how that technically, practically is implemented yet, but we have some conversations set up, and we've got some targets that we know are ripe. And I'm super excited to start exploring that. So that's kind of where we're heading. And then keeping the model lean is important to me. We're not going to build a headquarters team of 20 or 30 people. We're going to keep true to our roots of grassroots, empower the members, and co-own this sucker. That's kind of the thinking.
I love it, Corey. I'm here with you, man. However I can support.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, I knew this was going to be a great conversation, but I'm walking away truly inspired. I know our listeners, our viewers are as well. Corey, for those who want more information about CAPS or maybe want to connect with you, go ahead and just share where we can do that.
You bet. Well, probably the easiest place to start is our website. So we have a new website that launched a few months ago. A lot of great information, video content. You can find our blog there. Lots of ways to engage. Our podcast is linked there as well. So that's yourcapsnetwork.org, YOUR, capsnetwork.org. If you Google CAPS Network, it'll show up. So click and navigate that. If you want to email me directly, you're more than welcome to. It's Corey, COREY, at yourcapsnetwork.org, and happy to field any of your inquiries in that way. And then social media, right? We one of the things that we've had a lot of fun with is connecting to and then sharing the activity that's happening locally in all these programs. So if you go to LinkedIn or you go to Twitter and you search for CAPS Network, you'll find us, and feel free to follow along. That's some of the most fun that I have is in the evenings when I have a spare minute, I flip through for 5 or 10 minutes and I look at all the various things that have happened that day across the country, and brings a smile to my face. So it's inspirational. But we'd love to connect to you if it makes sense for you.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, share it, like it. Don't be selfish. So many great gems were dropped here. And if you feel like that CAPS network, there could be a good fit there. Definitely I encourage you to reach out. Seeing it firsthand, so many different examples of it across the country. It really is a great example of helping prepare and expose our students to careers where they can find happiness and success. So another great episode in the books, Corey. Thank you for joining us. And to all our viewers and listeners, remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.